And welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Hope everybody is off to a fabulous start this morning. Joe Rexrode, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing fine. Probably a little bit better rested than you two guys are.
Beautiful stuff last night. Staying up doing the pre and post game show for the Preds and the Kraken, for the Preds to lay a goose egg out there. I did wrap up the post game show by about 12:30, Joe. So that was fun. Good stuff. Not that long ago. This is kind of like the post game show to the post game show.
Well, you go post game show right into the pre-show meeting, right into the show.
Narduzzi was just loud this morning too. Like I couldn't get him to tone it down and understand that the rest just wasn't quite there for me this morning.
Yeah, he's still mad about that Cade Klubnik run, man. You gotta give him some grace on that,
That's Clemson. Gotta watch out for those guys. Narduzzi, not a big fan of those guys. Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Morning, fellas. Yeah, doing all right. I did not stay up for the third period. I had to conk out because I needed to, and here we are this morning. Glad I got to recover for the last day, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah, Keyser fighting through it yesterday, and now he's back with us today. We appreciate Jake Lyman stepping in for him yesterday on the program. We got a lot to get to on the program today. We'll have Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for his weekly visit coming up at 8 o'clock. So we'll get into the Titans and all things NFL with him. We are going to get into the Predators a little bit later in the show. They're now 20 games in, and they're 6-11-3, which is not good. And by the way, they've been shut out 4 times this year, and it's November 21st, which is also not good. So we're going to get into that a little bit later with the Predators on the program. Take your thoughts on the Titans as well right now, 615-737-1025. Speaking of, rough nights, rough days yesterday, Rexrode's getting dominated in Jared versus Joe competition right now. What's going on, Joe? What's happening here?
This is what I get for I could have put a topic in, and I look and I see, let me read the topic here. Joe Rexrode is getting trounced by Jared lately in Jared versus Joe. My goodness. Yeah. You just love this. Well, listen, the problem is I'm saying this now, when this, whatever, Caroline is deciding Jared's winning and predetermining Jared's
there
winning.
You go. Caroline and I were having a private conversation yesterday. I think there's a little bitty saltiness coming from you in this topic.
Okay, no. Okay, if you want a serious discussion of this, I'm not talking about yesterday. That's not the case. But this is the thing, and I think this has happened both ways. But if you know what both sides are going to say, like if you already have heard us talking on the radio and we're totally at odds on something, and then you make that the basis for the win, then you have predetermined the winner. Tell me, how am I wrong about that? To me, you have to, and it's not easy. I wouldn't want to do it, but you have to come up with something where you don't know what our answers will be, or that can't be like the basis for who wins. Am I right? Or am I right?
I think there's great, character and quality and all these things in our competition. That's what I think.
Okay.
I don't doubt, I don't doubt Caroline's motives in this competition. That's what I believe.
Well, it's not doubting her motives. It's just that it's kind of just like you have to come up with something more unique, right? Like if we're, and this was last week, was just the whole, should you fire Rand, right? Or whatever. Right. And so I'm like, no. And he's like, yes, well, sorry, Jared wins. Like, okay, well then you knew Jared was going to win. There's no arguing about that. But I really do. I think we need to end Jared versus Joe.
Really?
Yeah, it's stale, man. But see, I'll wait until I quote unquote win one, and then I think we need to mix it up. I think PK versus Jared would.
Now we're talking.
He would do it. PK would do it. So
there was a time that you wanted to just switch it up and let me be the judge, but I guess that went out the window a few weeks ago. I just no longer am trusted by you to do the judging properly.
No, it's not that. That'd be fine too. I think that switching, at least letting our show have it half the time, would be doing something to also freshen it up, but it's stale. And but again, I know people are going to be, oh, well, you're just a sore loser, sour grapes. So I couldn't. I hope Jared wins all the rest. I do.
Okay. All right.
In fact, from now on, I'm going to do everything I can to help Jared win because he gets excited about winning. Jared versus Joe. So I am devoted to him winning from now on.
Lenny says Jared is the Jake Paul of radio. Does that mean he enjoys beating up on old men? It kind of happened yesterday in the competition.
There you go. Yeah, the only thing I really know about Jake Paul is he does do that. He beats washed up boxers, and he used to be like some YouTube dancer or some video game dude, right? Is that
I know that YouTube is involved somehow, some way. This is where I am not, as they say, one of the cool kids anymore. That's about the extent of my knowledge of the Paul brothers. I know there's two of them.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's another one too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, text line, if you want to weigh in, we can make this our question of the day.
Yeah.
Why don't we, speaking of that, why don't we have Jared versus the other Joe? We can start doing Jared versus the other Joe.
Maybe rotate it around. It doesn't have to be just one singular Joe. I mean, we can rotate this thing around to multiple Joes. I think we might be onto something here.
Yeah, we could do, I think there's some weeks recently where Jared versus Derek would have been great, right?
I agree.
They're totally at odds on the Rand Carthon stuff. Here and there, all of a sudden, Adam versus Robby.
Yeah, why not?
I'm just saying. I think we can reimagine some of this stuff. So,
thought. We might have to do that. That may be something that we have to come to the conclusion of. In all seriousness, I did find the right tackle part of this pretty interesting in terms of, basically Caroline's question was, who is held accountable for the right tackle part of this, and specifically Nicholas Petit-Frere, the way he's played, the idea to keep going back and starting him. And look, Brian Callahan threw it out there yesterday that he's going to be out there again this week. There's no recourse at this point, right? Like, you've gone and you've made moves on the practice squad. I mean, you're just grasping totally at straws at this point. But I do think the deeper discussion of, man, how has it gotten this bad with Nicholas Petit-Frere is a worthwhile discussion. Like, I don't agree with Jared's assertion that he's just been this bad always. Even as somebody who was not overly excited about the idea of him playing right tackle this year, he is not the same player that he was as a rookie. I don't care what PFF grades say. I don't care about any of that stuff. Just watch the guy play. It's not the same as it was when he was a rookie. And again, he wasn't great as a rookie, but he was better than this. And it's been such an absolute black hole for that Titans offense this year of how bad that position has been. It's truly mystifying to watch it play out the way that it's played out. And now it's to the point where that right tackle, whether it's first round or not, has to be a gigantic project that the Titans have to get figured out this offseason. And on a team where you've already got all these other projects that you have to figure out positionally, it would have been rock solid. If he was fine, he didn't have to be great, but if Petit-Frere was serviceable over there, we wouldn't even be talking about this heading into the draft next year. But now it is either the top need or one of the top needs for the Titans, and it's very unfortunate it's played out that way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That this has not been him all along. And yeah, the question, that was the Jared win, was the accountability, which again, I guess to me, there should be accountability for Nicholas Petit-Frere. But apparently that's a no to say. But of course, there's accountability for the front office. I mean, kind of a question of, was it obvious to everyone in the building that there were all these red flags that Bill Callahan should have known about? I mean, Bill Callahan certainly knew about the gambling suspension, right? So it's not like people were keeping secrets from him, were they? I don't think so. I mean, just who knows why he's been bad. But again, when that fantasy football thing came out at the beginning of the year, I'm sure that all of them were like, wait, what is he doing? And of course, then you follow that up with like the performance on the field. And again, it's just like you look at all of it and it's just, I'm sure there's a lot of head shaking that has gone on in the building.
No doubt about it. I got one texter that says, how is NPF's fantasy football gig going? Are there any updates there? I've not seen it, Joe. I need to go see if I can find like visual evidence of him participating in this activity because I've not seen any so far.
I know that he works with a former coworker of mine at the Athletic, Nando DeFino, who's an awesome dude, and really likes NPF, of course. Nicholas Petit Frere, very nice guy. But yeah, I have not seen. I don't know. I think that there's some video element to it, isn't there? I think there
I
is.
think that was the plan at some point. Yes.
But yeah. I mean, I guess we could but we could probably uh, find some clips. Probably maybe we should do that. Maybe we should string some together and see if we can evaluate him on that and see if he's doing better in that than in football.
I would really start the Texans defense this week. I think the Texans defense could be a heck of a move for you guys out there. Back to you. Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate your advice there.
Texans might have a lot of sacks this week, folks. There's my tip.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We're off and running today on Robby and Rexrode. Joe, we've talked a lot about the future of the front office, the future of the coaching staff, all these things. There's one reason that I was thinking about yesterday that we've not spent, I don't think, any time on that convinces me, or at least helps convince me, that I don't think Amy Adams Strunk is going to fire anybody. We'll get into that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. We're back in Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Lots of discussion that we've had, and we'll continue to have, Joe, about the future of the Titans front office, about what the future, I guess, potentially of the coaching staff could look like as well, thrown in there. One thing I was thinking about, though, yesterday, and it's a very practical reason. You know, I've said it last week. If you forced me to choose today, I would probably move on from the front office. You are on the other side of that discussion. But either way, I think it's going to be a discussion unless things get, dramatically better here as they move forward by the time the end of the season rolls around. I was thinking about this, though, Joe. If I had to lean what they're actually going to do, my answer would be that Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan are all back next season. And that's for a multitude of reasons. But there's one reason that I was thinking about yesterday that I think just viewing this ownership, viewing the way that this franchise operates, makes me almost convinced that they're coming back next year. And it really has nothing to do with what we've seen on the field. It's simply this, Joe. Right now, she's paying John Robinson to not be the general manager of her football team. And she's paying Mike Vrabel to not be the head coach of her football team. Do we really think that she's going to do that with those two and then turn around and also pay either Brian Callahan, Rand Carthon, or both to not be the general managers and head coaches of their football team while she's already paying Mike Vrabel and John Robinson to not be involved with their football team? I don't know. That just seems like a lot of people to be paying and then going out and hire another general manager on top of it to then be throwing all that money that way. And I know it's the NFL. They make all the money in the world. I get all that. I'm just saying that's a lot of people to be paying to not do a job, Joe. And I think that could factor into it.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of why I was at 2 point whatever percent. I keep forgetting the point, how much I had after the point, 2.6, whatever. Yeah, but absolutely. Now it is going to, with John Robinson, I think that's going to take it all the way. And I believe it's a 5-year deals for both of those guys, 5-year extensions, whatever you want to call it, in early 22. So we're still we're talking more than 2 years of those. Now Vrabel will be deferred, will be cut down, obviously, because he's going to get a coaching job. And so I mean, if he doesn't, then I actually think it's out of spite possibly at this point. So look for that. If Mike Vrabel does not end up getting a coaching job here, then he may just be like, you know what, I think I'm just going to keep getting paid by Amy. Thank you very much. But I think that'll happen. Believe me, if anybody out there thinks that, because I understand if Vrabel goes somewhere else and if he wins, and then it's just one more reason people are going to yell at Amy, I promise you she wants him to get a job. I promise you she wants him to get a job and take less of her money here.
People are calling her as a reference. Mike's a great guy. Mike's a great coach. He's a great collaborator. He'll really work with you well. Make sure you hire him.
Oh, God. That's fantastic. Yeah. Maybe the greatest coach of all time. I just, he was so good we had to fire him.
I really hated to get rid of him, and I think you should hire him now.
Oh, God. It's like when, Tennessee, of course it's different. It's not the same deal with like the college, but like trying to get people to hire Butch,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, look, I mean, there's no question that, and it's like, there's other contracts too that happen from time to time. There's coach contracts. Some coaches try to get 2-year deals for their assistants, which also gives them a little bit of security. And I'm just saying, for example, so there could be other people in the operation that also have, contracts beyond just the obvious 3 that we're talking about. So you're talking about if you clean house, what does that mean? How much paying of people to go away are you doing? And then how much hiring you're doing? As we've talked about, there's a lot still in place in the whole operation from before, like in terms of scouts and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a definite big reason why it's just very unlikely. Although I know, some would say it'd be courageous. I mean, to me, beyond this, there's just more information that I would want to have before I completely do this. And again, as we talked about yesterday, also, are you doing this just to do it, or is it, if you think you have someone like, okay, this person is the person, this is, I should have done this last time, or I didn't know about this person, but now I do, and this is the answer. Okay, well, then that makes things a little different. But to me, to just say, no, this is bad, firing them, and now let's try and start over again, I think that's kind of crazy.
Well, I'm not saying that it's the only factor that goes into this. Like, at the end of the day, if Amy Adams Strunk looks at this and says, man, this is just terrible. Like, this process is terrible. This is not what I thought was going to happen. This is not what I was sold. And I don't have any confidence whatsoever in the direction that it's going. Then ultimately, that's probably still going to be the most important determination at the end of the day. But Joe, as you're sitting here, like if you're Amy Adams Strunk and you get to the end of this season and you're making a pros and cons list of reasons to keep Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan, Chad Brinker around, and reasons not to, I would imagine as she's looking at her bottom line and looking at how many people she's presently paying to not be here, it's probably going to say, man, do I really want to pay, 2 general managers to not be the general manager of our team anymore? And then, by the way, go hire another one to be the general manager of the team. Like, I can't imagine that's an overly enticing idea. And I get it. Like, some of the reaction to this is going to be, oh my gosh, it's the NFL. You see how much money they make? You know how much money is involved? And I get all that. And she's a billionaire, and I get all that. I'm just saying it's still, I don't think is an overly enticing idea to owners. And not all owners are created equal in terms of their value, by the way. We've talked about that throughout the league. I don't think it's an overly enticing idea to just be paying a ton of money to people left and right to not work here anymore.
Yeah, and again, especially if it's just aimlessly firing and, okay, what's next, So, yes, I understand the money. I mean, look, Amy is a billionaire, which is like the reported net worth of like 2.1 billion. Okay. I mean, she's one of the poor billionaires in the NFL. So a mere 2 billion. But seriously, look, hey, these people don't get into this business. And I know obviously she inherited this business, but they don't get in this business to lose money or to spend a ton of their own money when they can have cities build stadiums for them. And right, I mean, like, this is a money-making industry. Anybody who is invested in the NFL has come away doing great, but also like, like there's some cheapness with these owners too. That's part of the whole equation. Yeah. So, I
mean, apparently the Kansas City Chiefs are like the cheapest franchise on the earth. Like, you remember that player survey where like,
F minus.
Yeah, F minus and all that stuff. But I mean, they just keep winning championships all the time.
Yeah, it's, and this changed now. But one of the funny things for me when I first came to Nashville, having basically covered college football for most of my career, so I'd gone to all these, different places with their football buildings and stuff. And the first time I saw like the Titans facilities, I was like, oh my God, this is horrific. Yeah. It's like, it's like, this is like like FCS. Now, Amy did invest in that and made it like a, solid, and they have a good facility, but still, yeah, like the pro places compared to the college places, because it used to be that was what you had to do to recruit, right?
Yeah.
And now it's not. Now they're getting paid too, to their credit. But yeah, I mean, people still want to go to Kansas City, right? Because they have a good coach and they have best quarterback and they win, so they want to go win. But apparently, they're very cheap. The Bengals are notoriously cheap.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Wes in Clarksville says paying 3 coaches and 3 GMs at the same time would have to be a record. I don't know, man. Like,
I bet you that's happened.
Cleveland Browns have gone through some coaches and GMs. The Raiders have gone through some coaches and GMs. I bet it's happened before.
Yeah. In fact, I would not be shocked if it's gotten to 4, one or the other, or at least
Yeah.
with the coach side, maybe not the GM side.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on the Titans, the front office, the decision that Amy Adams Strunk has to make coming up. A lot of your thoughts to get to as well on the text line. We'll do that. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. So we'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Discussing the Titans and the decisions, potentially, that Amy Adams-Strunk could have to make at the end of the season. I threw it out there. I mean, paying John Robinson to not be the general manager here anymore, and Mike Vrabel to not be the head coach, even though I'm with you. I think he's probably going to get a head coaching job this cycle. And then turn around and firing either Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan, or both, and paying them to also not be here. Seems like a lot of money to be paying people to not be here at the end of the season. If you're Amy Adams-Strunk, I don't think that's the only decision that you have in this process in terms of your reasoning here. But I'm just saying, I certainly think that could factor in. David on the text line says, do top coaches or GM candidates really want to come here if Amy seems to fire so quickly compared to other organizations? What do you make of that one, Joe?
Yeah, I responded and I said it's a fair thing to bring up, but the answer is still yes. I mean, there's 32 of these. There's 32 of these jobs as GM, 32 of these jobs as a head coach, and a lot of these owners are, as I wrote it, trigger-happy doofuses. Nice. And he came back and said, sure, but there are only 7 or 8 on average available each offseason, so short of overpaying over longer term or an established QB, the Titans attract top options. Yeah, I mean, I understand, man, but like, look, the reality of the GM game is, as we've talked about, first of all, like you get your shot, and a lot of times that's it. So in some ways, I mean, you could make an argument for being more selective. So maybe there are some, have there been some people who have been, we've talked about the hesitance on the coaching side of like working with Jerry, right? In Dallas, things like that. But for the most part, I mean, you can't guarantee opportunities, So I think it's fair to bring it up. Like, would people be scared away by how Amy has gone about her business here in the last couple of years? I still think ultimately, like, maybe if there's a really coveted candidate on either side, you lose out to like an organization that has a better ownership record. But for the most part, you're going to still get really good people. That's how these owners, again, that's how these owners can be so bumbling and still have good stretches, because one, the NFL is designed for parity, but two, because like you almost have to fall into hiring good people sometimes. You know what I mean? I mean, like, again, it's like they all want these jobs. And so for the most part, they're going to be like, I have an opportunity to do this. Okay, well then I'm going to take this job. And I mean, look, like when John Robinson came, he came at the time when people were still like the Patriots model was absolutely the model, right? Oh, yeah. And the Titans were absolutely the worst situation. The worst team, 5-27, all this stuff with like the sellouts at the time. There's all this stuff around this franchise that was terrible. And he came in and boom, they started winning. So, I mean, you can still get good people.
Well, look, the Cleveland Browns have continued to hire coaches and general managers. The New York Jets have continued to hire coaches and general managers. I mean, heck, even the Chicago Bears have continued to hire coaches and general managers.
That's true.
Had to get one good shot in on them this week.
Well, look, and I understand, here you go, the model franchise here, Detroit Lions. But now again, I think it's pretty clear, like they found a member of the biological family who has a clue, one in the Fords. But is it because Sheila Ford Hamp is like a genius, or did she kind of get lucky with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell? I don't know. You have to give her credit for sure. But there's another example of a terrible franchise forever with bad ownership and bad management. Just some of you go through their list of especially GMs, but boy, they've had some doozy head coaches too, right? Oh. And at some point you can figure it out.
And by the way, like John Robinson, I know it ended very poorly for John Robinson and it ended poorly for Mike Vrabel. That's 2 pretty good hires from Amy Adams-Strunk, right? Like,
yes.
I mean, the large picture of it, and certainly the heyday of it, was pretty good. And I know it didn't result in a championship, but it did result in a couple of division titles, some trips to the playoffs, trip to an AFC title game. And prior to that, it had been a long time since this franchise had sniffed any of that. So I guess what I'm saying is, look, Do I think Amy Adams Strunk has handled things well over the last few years here? No. As a matter of fact, I think it's the exact opposite. I think she's handled a lot of things really poorly the last few years. Is it totally impossible that she could, if she does decide to move on, could go out and make some really good hires and this thing could turn around? No, that's not impossible. I mean, she's done it to this point. Now, that doesn't guarantee that she does it again in the future. I'm just saying, when you bring up the Lions, they're a great example of it. We'll see what that results in this year for them. Like, look, the Browns are awful. They're 2-8. I still think Stefanski's a good coach. I think he's going to end up paying the price for it. But like, you can be in quote unquote dysfunctional organizations and still end up hiring pretty good people.
Yeah. And look, I mean, and I think we're going to find out this, but we're still in the middle of this test of how she did in terms of hiring this group and then reorganizing this group. And then they went and got their coach. And again, I don't think that this season is going to be the end of the evaluation. I mean, I really don't. Now, maybe it will be, but it is still possible, as hard as it may seem right now, to believe that this group of people right now in the building turn it around. I mean, it's not, the way crazier things have happened, especially in this league.
Terrell,
they got some work to do, though.
They do. They got a lot of work to do. Terrell on the text line says, because you're a billionaire doesn't mean you want to spend it all willy-nilly. Speaking of contracts, people want to get rid of Levis. Is his contract guaranteed for 2 more years? Aren't we kind of stuck with him if no one wants to trade from him? We're going to get a little bit deeper into the Levis conversation in the 7 o'clock hour. But yeah, my first thought to that is, you could try to trade him this offseason if you wanted to, but if not, whatever you do at quarterback, whether that's a draft, whether that's adding a veteran in free agency, you could have Levis here to compete with said quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's not. Yeah, this is not the NHL, so I mean, there's no guarantee for 2 more years. There's a dead money, as I wrote back to Terrell, dead money of 4.8 million is all it is. If you pre-June 1, if you move on from him, so you could try to move him. You could. I mean, there's no reason to cut him. I mean, I think that I think he's going to be around next season, paid by the Titans, and if he's your backup quarterback, then that's not bad. And it may be competing to be your starter. He may be your starter. My guess is he will be on the roster next fall, but it doesn't have to be. It's not some non-starter financially.
No, and then that's the benefit of taking him where they took him in the second round and not 4th overall like another franchise did. Which, by the way, maybe the Colts are just geniuses, man. They benched him for a couple weeks. He came out, played the game of his life last Sunday. Shout out to Anthony Richardson.
I mean, I tell you what, it's impressive. The way he was playing and then the way he played last game. Yeah, if that's what he's going to be now, then I tip my cap to all those geniuses in Indy.
Or it could also be that they were playing against the New York Jets, which I always have to factor into this discussion as well.
There is also that. Yes.
Not company you want to be mentioned with. And look, I understand that the record is worse, but my question to you is legitimate right now, Joe. Who would you rather be right now? Would you rather be a fan of the Tennessee Titans or would you rather be a fan of the New York Jets? I throw that question to you.
Well, I think, first of all, I'm answering Titans because the Jets, the length of their futility is just astounding. I mean, their last playoff appearance was what year?
I think 2010, which is a long time ago. That's when I graduated high school.
It should not happen in the NFL. I mean, again, even the freaking Lions, they would mix in a playoff appearance, here and there. So no, I would have to say Titans. I mean, I know it seems so long ago now, but your Titans were actually winning divisions not long ago. The Jets have not been to the playoffs since before Twitter existed. That's not good. That's a problem. And it doesn't look any better now. It's just where the heck did they go from here?
I mean, I'm sure the last time the Jets were in the playoffs, I was having a heck of a day on MySpace. I bet MySpace, the chatter on MySpace, I bet was unbelievable that day.
The MySpace, was it did you have My5 or something like that? Or is that something different? Maybe that's a cell phone.
Oh, I had you had your friend list. And I remember, when you're in high school, somebody piss you off. You'd be like, well, you're not in my top 8 friend list on MySpace anymore. What do you think about that? Probably a big problem for you, huh?
Oh, it's a top 8. Okay.
Yes, I think it was top 8 at the time.
Elite 8. Okay, nice. Wow, good old MySpace. I never got into the MySpace.
I will never forget these 2 girls that I was friends with got into a spat, and one of them took the other out of the top 8 on MySpace. It was a big sore subject for a long time, big time.
Yeah, it's simpler times, man. Now it's like these kids are doing whatever they're doing on Snapchat, and then it disappears. It's just a real problem.
It is.
Don't even get me started.
615-737-1025, our phone number. It's time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. I believe in miracles. Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week, time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, as you do every week, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Okay, well, both of mine are outside of the arena of play. My best is, this week just reminds me that college football is built for, of all the things that are great about college football, the pageantry, the tradition, all the things that go into it. The arguing is just a wonderful thing, right? Like, we just love arguing and screaming about college football. I mean, I believe I have to check Wes Rucker's Twitter account. I think he has Indiana relegated to a rugby league in central Indiana now. And so it's just like the arguments just get at times absurd and they get way too loud. But what if we didn't have arguing in college football? What would we do?
I can tell you this, like, I was going to sleep last night. I wrapped up the Predators post-game show. It was like 12:45 in the morning. I was going to sleep. I just checked Twitter real quick. And Wes was on there at 12:45 a.m., which is 1:45 a.m. Knoxville time last night, still yelling at people about the college football playoff. I was like, here we go, Wes. Lean in.
Oh, man, he is leading the charge of screaming. But it's everywhere, and I just love it. And we're not done. We got a lot more screaming to come, and I'm here for it. My worst is Adam Schefter. Congrats on the sex, okay? But like, bro, we don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about these things. Please stop. Don't tell us any more about it, bro. Okay? That's my worst. Congrats on the sex, though.
For those who may have missed it, he was asked about the what was it, like it's
like, what's the
strangest place that you broke news before?
Yes.
And he basically, that was his answer. It's like, oh, thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. Yeah.
I mean, there are shudders, and then there's just like the full body, like, ah! That's what happened for me.
Yeah, nobody needed to know any of that. Nick Keyser, your best and worst things in sports.
Yeah, honestly, it's not anything in like crazy particulars here for the NFL, just all the drama that's going on. Because when I was sick, I passed out, and then I thought about, what am I missing in the world of sports? Well, I missed out on something pretty big. It was Joe Douglas getting fired. So there you go. Is he? I'm sorry. Yeah, he is the GM. So there you go. Or he was the GM. So then firing.
Yeah, he no longer is. He got canned.
I know. Yeah. But look, their coach and GM getting fired in the same season. The Jags also, the awkwardness, the press conferences are just gold right now. Watching just Peterson try to scramble for an answer is just hysterical. Danny Dimes getting benched to quarterback 4 is interesting to me, and just all the scuttlebutt that's there with that. I just love the NFL drama that's going on right now. And then my worst in sports, the Preds. They only have 5 games this season where they have scored 4 or more goals. And I think that says enough about this team, among another myriad of things that we could talk about, and we will later. But they just cannot score for the amount of firepower that they ultimately have, and it's really sad to watch.
Yeah, not very good so far. We'll get into the Preds a little bit deeper later in the program, coming up right around 7:30 on the program today. There's a lot of different – this is one of those weeks, Joe, where I got a lot of different options here. I mean, I could go with the Chicago Bears, thinking that they finally had beaten the Green Bay Packers and then get the field goal blocked as my best thing in sports. I could go with the officiating and the Titans game being the worst thing in sports. There's a lot of different ways that I could take this. For my best, I will go Dalton Connect and his 37-point performance. I thought he was outstanding, 9 of 12 from three. And the conversation now, granted, a lot of this is coming from Vol Twitter, but even in the NBA, the conversation of, you know what, guys, I think a lot of teams in front of the Lakers at number 17 overall may have screwed this up. And that guy may end up being pretty good in the NBA, even though I know, Joe, he was at the ripe old age of 23 when he was drafted, which I know for some people is just a non-starter. He might be pretty good in the NBA. So Dalton Connect, my best thing in sports. My worst thing in sports is very similar to your best, Joe. It's the college football playoff committee.
There
It
we
has
go.
led to a lot of yelling. And I'll say this, as somebody who loves college football just about as much as anything in sports, I mean, to me, it's like the NHL and college football, they're right there together, even more so than the NFL. I love those two things. It is a little bit tiresome to get up there and try to determine what cock and bull reasoning the college football playoff committee and specifically Ward Manuel is going to come out with and start talking about on a weekly basis. And I am probably somebody, Joe, who has been a little bit too harsh on Ward Manuel because I know that he's basically just the spokesperson for all these people. But just the amount of things that either get made up or the same standards that don't apply from week to week or even from team to team in the same week, I will say at times it's pretty exhausting to watch. But you know what? I'm going to keep watching it, baby. I'm coming right back to it every week. So they've got me right where they want me, Joe. And that's the worst thing in sports.
That's good. Yeah, I will say, look, it is a hard job because we've talked about it, but it's like there are times when the person who is speaking just really doesn't even know why some people did what they did. However, he isn't very good at it. Like they've had past committee chairs who at least sort of can word salad you to death. And he's just sort of like, yeah, they just sort of did it. Okay, thanks, bye. I mean, there's really nothing satisfying at all when he starts to give his explanation.
No doubt about it. One texter says the worst thing in all of sports is this Preds team. No heart, no unity, no passing, no organization, no nothing. Bought a half a season, and I'd do it again, but man, they suck. Last night was appalling, except for Juice and Wedgie, of course. This from an unnamed texter on the text line. We've gotten a few votes for the Predators for the worst things in sports. We also have a few votes, Joe, for the officiating in the Titans game, which, like I said, I could have gone with that. The officiating pretty bad in the Titans game. Certainly a nice nomination for the worst thing in sports.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that. There definitely, it does seem there's some video of Callahan going to Carthon and asking about, how many plays and things. It does seem like, and there's some talk this week about, the refs being a little bit vindictive in some of those, those penalties on Prince and things like that. Overall, whether that's really true or not, it was a bad performance, man. It was a very bad performance by these officials, no doubt. And it looks like it got maybe a little personal. Well,
I'm sure we'll get a nice detailed response from the NFL in terms of exactly what all went down and the officiating's, role in some of the calls that were missed. I'm sure that's coming any day. I keep checking my inbox. I hadn't seen anything yet, but I'm sure that's coming anytime now, Joe.
Yes, and full accountability for the officials and full disclosure to the public, because that's just what the NFL does, man. You
615.
You gotta appreciate it.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back into the Titans coming up next. One question I have about Levis and the discussion around him at the quarterback position that I think could be really fascinating for the Titans heading into the offseason. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We'll have Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports with us at 8 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans, on Will Levis, and on all things NFL. I'm sure Charles, Joe, will be very fired up to discuss the happenings of the New York Jets as well. Now that we kind of know what the picture looks like, there's so much talk about them the last 2 off seasons. And here they are at 3-8 or whatever they are. GM's gone, head coach is gone. The owner wanted to fire the quarterback. Looking forward to Charles's thoughts on that.
I mean, he's kind of told us all along this is going to be a bleep show. Not that he's the only one, but I'm sure he's got some interesting things to say on that.
So speaking of quarterback, and Joe, I'm about to violate a little bit of my own rule here, and we are going to talk a little bit of draft here, but I think it's relevant as it relates to the Titans. So we all know Will Levis against LA took a step forward, certainly from what he was earlier this year. Levis played well again last week against Minnesota. So there's still that part of it that's yet to be seen. What does it mean? What does it look like from him from here on out as he continues to play, as this season continues to progress? And there's more information to come on that. I have seen this conversation started to come up a little bit on Titans Twitter, and I understand kind of the thought process behind it, and I want to get your thoughts on it. This draft, particularly the quarterback class, there's some varying opinions on it, but for the most part, I think most people have said, and Charles Robinson talked about this with us last week, it's not viewed as a particularly strong quarterback class, right? You know, Carson Beck has been way up and down this year. You know, people like Cam Ward, people like Shedeur Sanders, but all in all, like this is not some just unbelievable quarterback draft heading into it. So I've seen Titans fans that have said, you know what? I'm not really in love with any of these quarterbacks that are coming out in the draft. And I don't really want my team to go take a quarterback just for the sake of taking a quarterback if you don't think that they're going to end up being very good. So I'm cool with just riding it out with Will Levis for another year and then maybe addressing quarterback after that if you're the Titans. And my question to you, Joe, is that a good enough reason to have Will Levis as your starting quarterback a season from now? I'm not saying be on the roster because as you laid out earlier, I still think it's pretty likely that he's on the roster next year. But is the fact that let's just make an assumption here that the Titans get through their evaluation and they maybe like a guy here or there in terms of the quarterbacks coming out this year, but they certainly don't like him well enough to be, the number 2 overall pick, which is what they would be right now, and they decide to go elsewhere with their drafting. Is the opinion on the quarterbacks coming out of this year's draft enough to ride with Will Levis as the starting quarterback next year? Or does it have to be more than that in your mind for the Titans to arrive at that decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. I first of all, it's there. I mean, they are going to be very close, I think, to having their pick of QBs. They may not be the number 1 overall pick, but it's likely that they're going to be right there. I mean, I guess I'd think that they're probably going to be in the top 3. That'd be my guess right now. Maybe not. They could obviously, like they could sweep the Jags and then. But so if we assumed for this discussion that they're at the top, well, then at least you're pretty close to having your pick of QBs. So answering that question, first of all, it has to be their evaluation of the quarterbacks. Maybe they think Shedeur Sanders is incredible. Maybe they think Cam Ward or Jalen Milroe. I mean, it's there are some prospects that I could see being very good in the NFL, but obviously, as we've talked about, it's not loaded. It really, all that matters is that there's one quarterback that you think is great, and if that's the case, well, then this is your opportunity at the top of the draft or close to it to get that QB. Now, obviously, they missed out a couple years ago on Stroud and thought they were trying to make a move there, but whatever all happened there. But so it comes down to their evaluation of those quarterbacks. I do think part of the discussion here does have to be the urgency part of it, right?
I would agree.
I mean, that's also where, like, how does Amy Strunk feel about all this? Like, does Amy Strunk like the idea of, yeah, go get the quarterback, renew okay, it's this era. But in the meantime, then you guys have the grace to, either go with that guy or go with Levis next year and have a 6-11 year, and then everything's going to be okay.
Right.
I mean, that's where it gets really interesting with the front office, with ownership, with patience. Amy may feel just as much as these guys may feel like this team has to win next year. Well, if that's the case, what's your best pass? So then it's the evaluation of the QB. Is there somebody you love? And it's evaluation, of course, of Levis. How does he play the rest of the year? Do you feel like you can win with him?
Right.
Is he going to improve to the point you can win with him? And then if you don't like either of those options, then you look into what you could do to bring in a veteran here as sort of a bridge QB. You start going the Indianapolis Colts way that they did after Andrew Luck, go in and try to, okay, let's try a little Phil Rivers. Let's try a little Carson Wentz. Let's try a little Matt Ryan, and with a pretty good team, which the Titans don't have right now. But if you can build with using your resources to draft and have a pretty good team around them, see what you can do with that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like the veteran QB route, we've talked about Darnold. Could somebody else become available via trade? Maybe. But then, like, let's say somebody came available via trade and it was somebody that's of some quality. Well, then you're giving up more assets, right, Joe, to go get that person, which is not really something they need to do right now, given the rest of their roster. So it's, if the quarterback evaluation of the draft isn't good and there's not really somebody coming out this year that you just love, particularly with where you're going to be picking or at least slotted to pick, I mean, you could be in a real conundrum at QB if you're the Titans this year, because you don't want to overdraft. Like, you don't want to sit there and reach for a guy if you're not convinced that somebody's going to be of high quality, and then you take him number 1 overall. But what happens if you're not in love with somebody that's coming out of the draft? You look at the veteran free agent options and you're either unable or unwilling to go get one of those guys because you don't love the quality of that. And you're not all that enamored with Will Levis at the end of it. Like, I think all three of those things could be a realistic possibility at the end of the year. I think there's a chance that you could get to the end of this if you're the Titans and say, you know what? Don't really love quarterbacks coming out of the draft this year. Not overly encouraged about Will Levis being our future at the quarterback position. And yeah, I mean, maybe Sam Darnold becomes available, but maybe he doesn't. And I'm not really all that excited about any of the other quarterback options out there as well. I mean, they could be just stuck in the mud at quarterback after this year.
Yeah.
Get excited.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. No, it's and that's the problem with having both a quarterback question and then everything else, not everything else, but like a lot of other things question, right? I mean, even when we always go back in the comparisons, and it's really wild how some of the things compare. Like, I think Koharski's, wrote that initial piece, but you go back to the 10 years ago, it's weird too. It's like a 10-year cycle with this organization. You go back to 2004 when they sort of had to gut everything, and, you had to deal with the cap, and a lot of guys went elsewhere, a lot of those really good players. But the difference, of course, from the 10 years ago is like they did have the QB in place. Didn't turn out well, but like, if Will Levis this year were playing in his second year like Marcus Mariota did in 2016 in his second year, first of all, they'd have more wins. And also, you would be going with him without question, not knowing for sure he's going to become a great player. Marcus didn't, right? And Marcus, I think injuries certainly are part of that story, but not the only part of the story. But regardless, that level of QB play would make the decision easy. If Levis takes the last game and sort of like that becomes sort of what he is on a regular basis with, and again, like you still have to like score points, as you've said, you still have to like have a chance to win some games, but not turning it over, making some big time throws, overall having good numbers. I think if you do that over several weeks in a row, then I think this discussion starts to tilt that way. But I think some people are also tilting a little bit quickly toward Levis next year, without too much evidence on his side yet.
I would agree. I would totally agree with that. And that's why I think they could face a real conundrum at quarterback after this year. We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll have more on that coming up next. Tune in to 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville today for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders taking on Ohio. Tip off at 11 a.m. Pregame beginning at 10:30. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game this Saturday at 11 a.m. for our college football game of the week. Indiana taking on Ohio State, presented by Twin Peaks Restaurants. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. Also, check out Nashville's best deal. It's Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. We'll have the Rob Rant coming up at 7:45. We will get into the Nashville Predators here in about 12 minutes or so. A very disappointing result for them last night. Right now, taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. So I'm throwing it out there. What do you do if you get to the end of the season and you don't love the quarterbacks that are coming out in the draft? You're not especially encouraged by Levis and the direction that he's going, and you're not in love with the free agent options that you've got at quarterback in the offseason either. What do you do if you're the Titans at that point? Josh, by the way, on the text line, Joe says Aaron Rodgers could be somebody that a quarterback could learn from in there. I will say this, and I know, look, we could joke about Aaron Rodgers a lot. I do think even if he ended up back in the darkness retreat, I don't think he would come out of there saying, you know what, I'm going to the Tennessee Titans. I think if he feels like he doesn't have a chance to win, he's not going anywhere. And I'll say this too, I'm not sure that he gives anybody a chance to win anymore based on what I've seen from him so far this year.
Yeah, he's not very good anymore. As I said back in the text line, yes, he could teach them how to be a selfish agent of complete chaos. Yeah, I think he's radioactive, and I'm with you. If there is someone out there who still thinks he's got some of that greatness left in him, he's going to choose the team that's close to winning. And right now, this would be pretty close to last on the list.
Yes, although I'm sure that his compound or facility or whatever he's got here is very nice, and maybe he would love to be close to that. Who knows? Skyler on the text line says, Titans just need to build a somewhat good team first before they draft another quarterback to ruin behind this line in lack of playmakers. Tannehill, Willis, and now Levis in the past 3 years have been set up for failure. There's some Skyler on the text line. I certainly understand that point of view, Joe. What you brought up, though, I think is the interesting part of all this. Like, we would all agree, even if the front office is back, if the coaching staff is back heading into next year, that's fine. But you need to start winning pretty soon. And do you have confidence that Will Levis is going to be able to do that for you? Because if you don't, are you more likely to maybe take a risk on a quarterback or take a risk on a veteran coming in free agency than you would be to roll it back with Will Levis? I don't know. I just think how bad they are and job security moving forward could factor into this. And what you don't want to have happen, and somebody brought this up on the text line too, what I don't want to see is the Titans reaching for a quarterback. Deagle said this on YouTube. I'm scared of them going for a quarterback to protect their jobs, taking somebody who doesn't pan out and then missing out on the following year's quality class. That's from Deagle on YouTube.
Yeah, I understand, but when you start thinking the year next, you have to try to, everybody in this league has to try to win. You have to try. There's a certain little level of or time period of grace if you're at the bottom, but you have to try to win in this league or you will not have a job. So a lot of good thoughts on this. It's amazing how much better this text line is during our show than mouth breathing hour during Jared's show. But Ron here says, Titans got to stop trying to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Trade our first pick in this coming draft to get more first-round picks to build this team right. We need about 2 years to get this team where it should be by the time the stadium is built. I get the sentiment, just kind of like Skyler, right? But then what if you do have the quarterback? What if you miss on the quarterback when you had a chance to draft? That's the hard part of this, right? So you have to, you basically have to trust your evaluation. Someone brought up how all the, how could you trust the Titans? Look at all the top quarterbacks they've drafted. Well, this is like a Koharski thing. It's in the DNA. These are different GMs. And again, if you don't think that your people can evaluate a quarterback and draft one and give you a chance, then you do fire them. But if this is the job they have, then you have to trust that they're going to, one, evaluate this QB class absolutely front and back to the max, of course. And then it's that balance of, is it time to get the QB, or is it not good enough? I don't think that you just dismiss the QBs because you have other issues on the roster. I don't think you can do that.
I don't think you could do that either. How often have we talked about this, though, in pro sports, though? Sometimes it's not about how bad you are. It's like when you're bad. Like, when the Colts were bad and they got Andrew Luck, it wasn't a bad time to be bad, right? Like, it worked out pretty well. Like, when the Bengals were bad and they got Joe Burrow, pretty good time to be bad. Look, one of these guys, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or whoever, like one or two of these guys may end up being great players in the NFL. I have no idea. I'm just saying, like, I don't think there's going to be any can't miss guy heading into this. And look, I'll say this, like Trevor Lawrence was a can't miss guy, and that's not going so well right now for Jacksonville. So it doesn't always hit either.
Yeah. Plenty of can't miss guys miss, and plenty of probably going to miss guys hit. Right? I mean, I guess who would be those guys at the top of the, I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes was not the guy most people were talking about. Yes, he was expected to be a first-round pick, but he was not considered, at the top of that class. Patrick Mahomes was probably regarded about the same. Seriously, going into that draft, it was all over the place. There was a lot of people who were like system and just down out, like, nah, don't give me that Texas Tech crap. It doesn't work, right? But he's probably similar in regard to like Cam Ward right now, and Cam Ward could be the top quarterback taken because this is a bad class. But that draft was about, obviously there's so much about, you had the whole Deshaun and you had Trubisky and whatever. I mean, it's just people you end up wrong so often at that position. But then if you miss out when you could have been right, you don't get to the top of the draft too often. So that's why the Titans have to be approaching things right now like they are drafting a quarterback.
Well, look, I said it earlier, there's still more games left to evaluate Levis as they move forward this year. So look, maybe the simple answer is he plays really well down the stretch here and they feel good about him heading into next year. And look, I think there's a scenario, Joe, where they can feel good about him heading into next year without having to make some declaration that he's the future of that position for the franchise. Like, right. I don't know that there's really anything he can do the rest of the year for us to definitively say, yep, that's their franchise guy moving forward. I think there's been too much bad before this for me to arrive at that conclusion at the end of this. But where you don't want to be as a coaching staff is to, let's say he gets the rest of this season and he takes another step back and it's back to more of what we saw at the beginning of the year. And then maybe he'll have a flash or two of what we've seen the last 2 weeks down the stretch. What you don't want to have if you're Brian Callahan is, well, don't love these quarterbacks, and I'm going back with Will Levis basically because I don't have a better option. Like, that's not a good spot to be in as a coaching staff after you've gone 4-13 or whatever they're going to finish this year.
Yeah, to me, he's got to be last game or better consistently, or else it's like then I think you have to be of the mindset of addressing starting quarterback one way or the other.
615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, the Predators in their road trip last night with a dud, and they fall to 1-2-2 on the road trip. They are 6-11-3 overall through the first 20 games. It's not pretty. We'll get a little bit deeper into that discussion coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's disappointing. Definitely there for us. We're not putting the puck in there right now. Myself not putting the puck in there right now. It's tough because we're, our goaltending's great to give us a chance to win these games, and when we aren't scoring, it's frustrating for everyone. It's just you can't win games if you're not going to score, and there's some opportunities there that we have to generate more and find a way to put the puck in the net.
As Ryan O'Reilly, after another Preds loss last night, they lose 3-0 at the hands of the Seattle Kraken. A 5-game road trip for the Predators, Joe, in which they ended 1-2-2. So I thought last night was a pivotal game for the road trip. Had you won it, yes, it would only be 2 wins out of 5, but you could have said, you know what, we got points in 4 out of 5. You collected some good points on the trip, and you feel like you're starting to build your game. Like, I thought they looked pretty good against Vancouver, and you had Stamkos come alive on the power play. Like, had you won the game last night, you could have said, you know what, maybe something to build on coming off this road trip, coming back home. And instead, you come out with just an absolute dud last night. Like, I thought were okay, pretty good in the first period, weren't able to score, weren't able to convert. And they basically just got their butts kicked in the second and third periods last night. And UC Saros, again, I thought was pretty good in net. But right now, Joe, this team can't score. Like, I think they were at 2.42 goals per game heading into the game last night, which is 30th in the league. Obviously, that's going down. You just got shut out. It's the 4th time that they've been shut out this season. And it's November the 21st. Like, we're not in December yet. And they've been shut out 4 times this year. And Joe, we've talked about this. Hockey season's a long season. There's still 62 games left or whatever there is. Having said that, they're 20 games in. Like, it's a fourth of the season for pretty much that's done. And quite frankly, they're a bad hockey team. They're bad. And that's probably the most concerning part to me. Yeah, the record's concerning. And you're 6-11-3. That's not a good spot. Like, that's not a very good spot to be in. We've talked about, the American Thanksgiving stat of if you're not in a playoff spot by then, history says you're probably not going to be in the playoffs at the end of it. But I think the more concerning thing to me right now is, Joe, they don't look good at all. Like, it doesn't look like they're any closer to pulling themselves out of it than they were this time 3 weeks ago, to the point where I'm starting to wonder, is this just what they are? Like, are they just this bad? Which is amazing to think about with the roster that they have.
Well, it's amazing. If you want to go to the deeper stats a little bit, moneypuck.com, obviously 5-on-5, they're just atrocious. This is a top 10 power play.
Yeah.
So the talent they have is translating enough on the power play. 5-on-5, it's unbelievable how bad they are. Now they're still, this is Money Puck, they're 19th in expected goals for, which isn't good, but it's still like hovering around the middle of the pack. But in goals for above expected, right? So there's what they're expected to do, and then what they have. They are minus 17.94 goals this year. So basically 18 fewer goals than they should have, which is dead last in the NHL. Yeah. So their 5-on-5 play is bad, but their ability to take advantage of opportunities is ungodly, unexplainable. So please explain it to me.
I don't know. I really don't. Like, Marchessault in particular last night, I just thought was brutal. Like, he's turned the puck over. I think he's trying to do too much. And I think but right now, like Joe, like, they're getting outshot in all these games. Like, they're getting hammered in all these games, just in terms of puck possession, and they're not really able to generate a ton. Like, you'll have the odd game here or there where they look really good, generating some chances 5-on-5, but not a ton. Like, think about this. Let's go back to mid-September, and I told you the first 20 games of the season, the Predators would have a top 10 power play, the number 1 penalty kill in the league. And oh, by the way, UC Saros who's traditionally a slow starter, would have a 916 save percentage by November the 20th. Had I told you all those things, I mean, you'd think they'd be in first place or in
Right.
second place. And instead, they're one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, it's I mean, clearly again, there are intangible things that are happening that are problematic, right? I mean, there have to be.
I mean, I don't know how there couldn't be that, or that or everybody is falling off the cliff. And look,
Yeah.
maybe that has happened. I mean, we talked about this when they did it. It's an exciting off season. There's a ton of talent. There's also a ton of age, right? Like Steven Stamkos is not getting any younger. Neither is Jonathan Marchessault. Neither is Roman Josi. Like maybe that's factoring into this a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, like something just seems off to the point where now, Joe, like we're 20 games in, and I kind of feel like Barry Trotz has to do something. And I'm not saying that necessarily has to be firing the coach, but I think we're getting close to the point where like a pretty big shakeup of some kind has to happen. Whether that is firing the coach, which I'm not a fan of, but like at this point, crazier things have happened. The Bruins just fired Jim Montgomery, or whether it's trading somebody that you wouldn't expect to have traded before the year started. Like I think we're getting pretty close to the point where Barry Trotz is going to have to shake something up. I don't know what else the answers are going to be as they move forward here.
I mean, like I've, tongue in cheek talked about, like just like joking with Jared, like, when are you going to talk about firing these guys? It's like tongue in cheek. But in the NHL, as you know, as we've discussed, that is, people go to that answer faster than in any other league. The coach I'm talking about. It's still, to me, mind-boggling to even discuss it for a second. But I don't know. This is just a complete mess. I mean, there's people throwing a couple things thrown out that earlier in the text line, earlier in the show that I remembered and I wanted to bring back. One, the idea of the pieces just like not fitting together. I kind of dismissed that idea. Barry Trotz has made the fantasy hockey quote, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like that should be the case, but maybe there's something to that. Someone did bring up too, like, the Dan Hinote and the staff change. I mean, hey, I'm throwing stuff at the wall here. I will say with Dan Hinote, as you know, say whatever you want. Like Dan Hinote is one of the most positive and enthusiastic, energetic people I've ever met. So I'm not saying like, oh, this is all about Dan Hinote's out here. But I will say, like, he's probably a guy who right now might be good to have around because, like, this has to be brutal. In those meetings and in that locker room right now, trying to search for answers.
Yeah, I mean, it really is mystifying. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the rant coming up here in just a few minutes. But I mean, right now, this is on track to be by far the most disastrous season in the history of the franchise. Disaster. Like that's what it is right now. When you go out and you spend that much money, and you bring in the players that they brought in, and you've got the roster on paper that they have heading into this, right now it's a disaster. Like there's no other way to put it. They've won 6 games in their first 20. And again, I try not to overreact too hard because there is still time, and there are historical examples of teams pulling themselves out of a similar start and not only making the playoffs, but getting to, a cup final or winning a Stanley Cup. Like there's examples to point to. But Joe, that's where the way they're playing comes in. Like I'd be a little bit more encouraged about that if they were just playing really well, particularly 5-on-5 and not getting the results. I mean, last night, 5-on-5, they got blown off the ice. And that's happened all year. Like they have not been a good team 5-on-5. And it does make me wonder, man, are they just this bad? Like, could we have missed the boat this much on this team?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some conversation today about Aaron Rodgers, kind of going back and forth, and it's like, I mean, take all the stuff away, take all the off-field stuff away. I think Aaron Rodgers is, he's finally showing his age out there. So to your point, that's got to be probably some of the answer right now. And obviously, what you hope if you're the Preds is that maybe, some of these older guys, come back and show more. But maybe there is a little bit of this is an old team. Your best players are older players, and some of them are starting to really show it.
Well, it's a combination of a couple things too. Like, look, we're 20 games in. I understand, it takes some time to get used to a system, and some of your new players, you expected somewhat a slow start for them. Like Brady Shea needs to figure it out. He looks horrible out there. Jonathan Marceau, I thought, was awful last night. And I know he had 5 shots on goal, but I just, he's all over himself right now. He's turning the puck over that's leading directly to goals the other way. He seems like he's still not quite on the same page with people. Like, that shouldn't be the case 20 games in. Like, it's time to break yourself out of that. And then you factor on top of that, like, Joe, some guys that played really well last year not having the same year. Like, Ryan O'Reilly hasn't scored in the month of November. That's a big problem. Like, they're relying on Ryan O'Reilly to be a big part of their offense. Gus Nyquist not having the year that he had a year ago. Even Forsberg. Like, Forsberg has been good, I think, for the most part, but he didn't score on the road trip. Like, this team's at a spot right now where they can't go 5 games without Philip Forsberg scoring a goal. Like, they can't have that. And there's too much of that going on. Like, I don't think Roman Yossi's been very good. Yossi looks bad to me right now. And that's all those things are very concerning, trying to figure out what that's going to mean for them moving forward. I mean, it would be one like last year, Joe, was pretty explainable, right? It's a new coach, it's a new system. And oh, by the way, our goalie that's usually really good has been pretty bad for the first half of the season. That ain't the case this year. And that makes it to me more concerning.
Yeah, it's a litany of issues and potential issues and questions, and the only answer is just like all you people who are like getting paid a lot, who have all demonstrated that you play at a high level in the NHL, play better, way better.
Yeah, I mean, way better. It's got to get way better. And the thing is, Joe, like, it's got to get way. We're to the point now. It's got to get way better in a hurry, because if you wait too much longer, by the time you get this figured out, if you get it figured out, it's going to be too late. Like, there's just too much ground that you're going to have to make up if this goes on too much longer. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll continue the discussion on the Predators coming up next. Got a few more things to say in the Rob rant. We'll do that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
Tomasino trying to get it out. Still in there in front. Stevenson alone. Pass to Spar into the empty net for the first goal of the game for Seattle. No look pass by Chandler Stevenson in front. Play behind the net by DeCourt. Strong did enough to slow it down as he lost his twig. Stevenson ahead, left side. Pass to the middle and they score on the rush. Chandler Stevenson's second expert pass of the night to Brandon Montour for a backdoor tap-in.
Not good from the Predators last night. They lose 3-0 to the Seattle Kraken. It is that time of the day, time for the Rob Rant here on the program. We got a lot of people weighing in on the Predators. We'll get to some of your thoughts coming up here. Joe, just real quickly, I saw something last night that I've never seen in my life before. Predators got called for a penalty like right at the beginning of the game for having the wrong lineup, like starting the wrong lineup out there. And I thought in some ways it's kind of symptomatic, emblematic of what we've seen so far this season. They put Steven Stamkos in the starting lineup when it was supposed to be Philip Forsberg. So I remember I was doing a pregame show and I remember seeing the starting lineup and thinking to myself, well, that's weird. Stamkos hasn't been with O'Reilly and Nyquist, I don't think, all year, and they weren't even together in the warm-up. It was Forsberg, so that seems strange. But, hey, sometimes the starting lineup, Joe, maybe Brunette, for whatever reason, wanted to have two centermen out there in case somebody got tossed on the opening drop, and he thought that winning the face-off was really important. Who knows? Well, it turns out it was just a mistake. And I don't know how it happened, Joe. Like, there's a few different ways it probably could have. Maybe one of the coaches just accidentally wrote down the wrong name. Maybe somebody read the handwriting wrong. I don't know. I have no idea what happened. All I know is that can't happen. And I know that the Predators killed the penalty off. And if there's one thing you feel great about right now with the Predators, it's that penalty kill. My goodness, they're really good. They were great again last night. They're number one in the league. But that can't happen. And especially when you're losing the way they're losing right now. Like, you can't just have incompetence. And again, I don't know how that happened last night. Maybe it was somebody not even related to the Predators who made a mistake putting it down. I don't know. I don't know what happened there last night. But I thought the way that game started last night, Joe, pretty emblematic of the way the year has gone so far.
I had no idea this was a thing.
Never seen it before in my life.
I didn't know this was and I'm like, wait a minute, what? A penalty for not having your lineup correct? I learned something new. And I saw some people saying like that's the most embarrassing penalty in franchise history. I think Martell tweeted that, among others, being like, just like, wait, what? Yeah, I think it's pretty representative right now of just an overall train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And like I said, there's time to pull yourself out, but not a whole lot of time. Like they got to get going here. They got to get going. And oh, by the way, you get Winnipeg coming up on Saturday at home, who's 16-3 to start the season. 16-3. So congratulations for the Predators. Look, maybe that's what they need. I don't know, but it's a heck of a challenge that they got coming up Saturday night.
Well, there you go. And not that anything in that game could possibly fix everything or even make people feel all that good, but maybe it's something like that. You know, maybe there is a little extra that you could get from actually coming together and playing really well and winning a game like that.
Maybe so. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Marshall to the program. Marshall, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good, man.
Good.
Good. So I wanted to get your thoughts on Bruno. I really like him. I really like him. But I think it was the Calgary game is where I kind of lost my patience with him and said, you know what? I think, granted, I haven't seen too many games, but I think maybe he's if he's on the hot seat, he should be for sure. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and then, if my thought process is true here on that, the Bruins just fired an excellent coach in Jim Montgomery. And I can't believe that happened. But might that be a good pickup for the Preds? I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Marcel. Appreciate it. Joe, here's where I'm at on that. I really like Andrew Burnett. I think Andrew Burnett's a good coach. You know, I said this earlier this year. You know, he was an interim head coach in Florida. He took the team to a President's Trophy. Last year in his first season as head coach of the Predators, he was a Jack Adams finalist. The guy knows what he's doing. I think the guy's a really good coach. I think tactically he's really good. You know, I've had some conversations with him about things they try to do out there. You know, not that I'm some hockey savant, but it all seems good to me. All makes a lot of sense to me. I think he knows what he's doing. Most importantly, I think the players really like him. I think the Predators think that he knows what he's doing. The players think and trust that he knows what he's doing. So I don't think they should fire Andrew Burnett. I think Andrew Burnett's a really good coach. Having said that, Joe, I also realize this is the National Hockey League. And when you have a team that has the expectations that this team has, and it's gone this poorly, there's only so long that you can hold off those conversations. And I thought those conversations that people were calling in with 6-7 games into the year were ridiculous. Like, I just thought it was ludicrous to be having those talks. Even though I wouldn't do it and would totally disagree with the move if they did do it, I can't say that those conversations are ridiculous anymore. Not when it's been this bad.
Yeah, it's the NHL. It's how it goes. And what happens is, to Marshall's point there, that's another part of it, is that there are typically good, accomplished coaches floating around too, right?
Yes.
So I guess those two things kind of go hand in hand. I have found it ridiculous too. I'm with you. I think he's good. I don't think they should do it. I don't think it should be a serious, intense discussion right now, but you can't be this far off from expectations and then that not be part of the discussion. I mean, we have people like Wayne says, it's time to part ways with Bruno. He's a lazy coach who prefers days off instead of practicing.
That's just stupid. I mean, that's totally ignorant, and you have no idea what you're talking about when you say stuff like that.
What does that even mean? So in other words, like giving them days off is the Preds need a coach who will crack the whip, Wayne says. Yeah,
and that's why most of the conversation around the Brunette stuff has always been dumb, because you get comments like that are just not grounded in reality. Yes, they take some days off sometimes. If you don't, you'd be complaining about him running the team into the ground. So like those type of things are just not a part of the conversation. And I'm not trying to take it out on Wayne there, but I've seen a lot of that. Like, that's not accurate.
Sorry, Wayne, I just brought you up to be smoked. Now, there's a lot to one point here that I think is interesting, which is the idea of his system and older players. And maybe there is something real, there's some reality to that. His system and older players, right? Like, first of all, guys who have been in something different. It's very aggressive. You think of speed with this system, although, as you have said, when you play it well, you play fast, right? It doesn't mean that you have to have a bunch of speed skaters out there. But I do wonder if there's something to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Evan says Andrew Burnett is not a good coach. 2 seasons back-to-back that the team has been dog water in the beginning of the season. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you think that, that's fine. I mean, we can cherry pick anything you want to cherry pick. They're pretty darn good in the second half of the year last year, and they're pretty darn good in Florida when they won the President's Trophy. So, look, I mean, if you think that Andrew Burnett is just a horrible coach, you can think that. I can't stop you from thinking that. I know that that's not the case. It's not me thinking that that's not the case. I know that's not the case. You all tried to tell us too that John Hines was this horrible coach, and he's got Minnesota 12-3-3. We tried to tell you, you know what?
Don't tell Stilly. Tell Stilly.
Maybe it is a little bit deeper sometimes than just the coaching. Who knows?
I mean, Dennis says Trotz is giving him filet mignon, and right now he's making PBJ sandwiches. I mean, maybe, or is some of the filet mignon, when you look closer, is it those little like steakums, where you make the steak sandwiches? I'm just saying.
Nice. 615-737-1025.
Let's make it about food.
Phone number. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. And we welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gents. How you doing this morning?
Doing awesome, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. So, Charles, Will Levis looking a little bit better the last 2 weeks. Played well against the Chargers. Threw a 98-yard touchdown. Looked pretty good against Minnesota. Now, granted, that led to an impressive 17 points of offensive output for the Titans against the Chargers and 13 against Minnesota. So nothing to write home about in terms of the offensive production as a whole. But what have you made of the way that Will Levis has played since coming back into the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I can't lie. Like when I didn't look at everything, but when I looked over some of the, cut ups from the loss to Minnesota, he had some nice throws. I mean, the 98-yarder, I was like, oh, is that just a bust? Is that just a mistake? No, he threw a really good ball. I mean, put it in a spot where, it made the play possible. And I think you kind of look at the situation with him in the last couple of weeks, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but it's positive, and I certainly don't want Will Levis to fail. So it's sort of like Bryce Young when he came back on the field. It's like, okay, is he going to take a step forward? Is he going to show that he can be better than he was when he went down? And I think Levis has definitely done that in back-to-back weeks. Hasn't produced, obviously, the outcome in either of those games that you would ultimately expect, but a little bit of flicker of light, gives you something to watch the remainder of the season. Obviously, the road game at Houston on Sunday is going to be a pretty big deal. I mean, really, the stretch coming up, Houston, Washington, those are two teams that are going to be playoff teams on the road. Pretty big deal. The home game against Cincinnati on December 15th. I mean, Cincinnati's putting up points like nobody's business. The record's terrible, but you're definitely going to have to score a lot of points to stay in a game with them. So, I think the next 4 games should tell us a lot about where the franchise is going and where Levis is headed and whether this is real or not. But I don't know. I mean, to me, it's positive. That's the biggest thing is when you look at the film. I talked to Nate Tice on our staff, and Nate does a ton of film stuff. And I said, "What do you think of the Levis cut ups?" And I don't think he watched a ton either, but he said he definitely saw some good throws, and I think he looked more poised, and it's, let's see if he can stack it. That's the biggest thing, is just stacking one on top of another. And really, I do think the Houston game is extremely important. The thing about Minnesota that's interesting too is it's a very, very good defensive team. They can create a lot of chaos. And it wasn't like I was sitting there watching Levis, at least again, and it was limited stuff that I looked at, but I wasn't like, oh, he looks so confused. And they do confuse a lot of quarterbacks, particularly when, they have that heavy look where they've got 7 guys in the line of scrimmage. And it's like, okay, all the decisions you have to make are now made post snap. You don't know exactly what you're going to be looking at until the snap happens, and then you have to process. And it felt like Levis seemed pretty composed about it. I don't know what do you guys think? How's it being absorbed there?
No, go ahead, Robby.
No, I mean,
don't all run out and
well, I think it's about like you put it, like, it's like, okay, well, that's cool. It's better than being completely horrible, which is what it's been most of the year. So let's see if you can do more of that. I don't think anybody's running away with, him being now the franchise quarterback moving forward.
Sure. It was. Here's the thing, though. It's 2 good defenses, right? I mean, the Chargers are a good defense, and Minnesota's a good defense. So, and again, it wasn't. Neither game was really close. But you ask yourself, does he look like he's still coming apart at the seams, or does he look like he's settled down a little bit? He looks settled to me. And again, I haven't watched everything, but he looked a little more settled down. And I think, like, it's interesting to see how the staff now handles him moving forward, because one of the things that Chicago has done, I was talking to somebody there about Caleb, and I said, okay, Thomas Brown's calling the offense there. Like, what are you going to do? And one of the things that they told Caleb Williams was, okay, here's the set of options. One thing we want you to do that maybe you haven't been doing up until this point is, if you don't see the obvious connectivity after the snap. If the decision does not present itself pretty quickly, go ahead and run. Like, access that part of the game. You can do that. And we're okay with that right now. It'll give you some confidence, and, you know, it'll make things a little more difficult for the defense that's facing. And he did that last week. You could see it. Like, he would drop, look. If he didn't see it right away, you know, I think they utilized some other things, the scheme game as well, or the screen game as well. But if he didn't see it right away, he was starting to run, and that was creating problems for the defense. You could see he clearly looked more confident. And that's kind of what I want to see, what the offensive staff and what Callahan does, you know, with Will Levis is, all right, let's see if maybe there's other parts of your game that you can access. If something's not working, let's just get you some confidence and let you settle in. And, you know, like I said, you don't want to get overly excited because it's positive, and okay, let's just take it as a positive and see where it goes. But I'm also curious to see if maybe they allow him to do some other. I think his athleticism, his ability to kind of move and run with the ball a little bit. I know he got hurt, so that's a little scary, but I'm curious if that's something they'll let him maybe reach for a little bit more down the stretch.
That was remarkably positive for a known Levis hater. Speaking,
I don't listen. You know, I want to see every quarterback succeed. Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, all these guys that are struggling. I hate it when these top tier guys or you know, young guys, especially. I mean, Levis has got a ton of tools. You know, he has so much going for him. I hate to see him fail. So, I hope. My hope is that we see another step forward against Houston. We see another step forward against Washington. And then I hope in the game against Jacksonville, when you absolutely should be able to put it together against Jacksonville and put up a number and really play well, I hope that's what this builds into. Because to me, if that happens, then all of a sudden you're saying, okay, maybe there's more to work with here. You know, maybe this isn't the panic button. We got to change quarterbacks in the offseason situation, which I think would be a very, very positive development for the Titans, because I don't think this is the good year to be looking for another quarterback this offseason.
Well, speaking of hated quarterbacks, what's going to happen with our guy, Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, he's not going to be in New York, right? It sure seems that way. I mean, it's Joe Douglas, obviously GM, gets fired. I had a chance to talk to somebody after that happened. Things kind of calmed down the next day. And I think I was a little surprised by from what I understood, Douglas, I don't want to say he was relieved, but I didn't realize how completely miserable some of the situation had been. Like, someone actually said to me, basically, when Trump lost the election in 2020 and Woody Johnson was coming back from the UK, that's when it ended. Like, that's what, because I had tweeted out like, hey, the end of this was really when Rodgers came back and was a shadow of himself. But this person I talked to the day after Joe got fired was like, yeah, no, you kind of have to go back to when Woody returned, because when he came back into the fold, he didn't like, it was the purse strings got pulled. All of a sudden money got super tight. And then all the decisions, like Woody wanted to make all the decisions, and he crept more and more into football, which I didn't realize the depths of it. This whole idea that, and great for the Athletic, by the way, because I didn't catch a whiff that he had said anything about benching Rodgers. Like, that came out of left field. And I talked to a lot of people in the organization. I'm like, how did I not hear this? Like, this is crazy for him to say that, and it to kind of be kept quiet that long is a bit of a stunner, particularly when they were playing poorly. Now, there's going to be some different advantages about like how serious was he when he said this in this group. And from what I was told, when the question got asked, like, are you serious? He didn't respond to it. He wasn't like, yes, I'm serious. But it's still for him to even say something like that in a mixed group. They haven't responded and said it wasn't true. I haven't had any pushback from anybody I've spoken to since. It's just wild that they've gotten to this point with that owner, that quarterback, and for a GM who added a ton of talent, won some trades pretty handily. I think he'll be back in the personnel ranks somewhere pretty quickly. It might be a while before he ever gets another general manager shot. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. But considering how poorly Woody Johnson is viewed in the NFL, and it's going to get worse, particularly as more stuff comes out, he'll have a shot. Now, that question is, does that extend to Aaron Rodgers? And I don't know. I honestly don't know, because there will be teams out there that need quarterbacks. Rodgers does not want to play anywhere where it's some kind of a rebuild situation. So I can't see him going to like the Raiders are going to be an obvious team of need. The Giants obviously are in town, but they're going to be a team of need. New Orleans, maybe. Obviously, there's a question. Let's see what happened with the Titans, but he's going to want to go somewhere where he can affect his legacy. That's what, when you talk to people close to Rodgers through this experience in New York, I think there's definitely one thing weighing on his mind. Is just this whole idea of like, is this really how I want to leave it? Like, will this be my legacy? And I think that's why he came out and said already, I want to play in 2025. Well, if he wants to play in 2025, unless the new coaching staff that comes in wants him, I think there's a chance that Woody may tell the next coach and general manager, we need to start over at quarterback. We don't want this guy in the organization. He's going to have to go somewhere else. And it's just hard right now to see a natural fit. An interesting thing, I will say, you can go back to who wanted Rodgers in the past, right? I think the Rams at one point had some interest in Rodgers. So if Matt Stafford departs there, maybe there's an opportunity for him in LA because there's no other quarterback. I think the 49ers, I'll say this about the 49ers, pay close attention to how Brock Purdy plays the rest of the way, because I'm definitely getting the feeling that this idea that they could be inclined to go, yeah, let's go one more year with Purdy rather than just giving him the extension now, unless he plays lights out the rest of the way. I think if he struggles down the stretch, and let's say the 49ers miss the playoffs, I think you could see that team go, let's do what Cleveland did with Baker Mayfield, give it an extra year. We can always franchise tag him if it doesn't work out, getting an extension done, but let's get another year to process it. Or being Kyle Shanahan being who he is, he could go, I bet you I can still make it work for a season with Rodgers, and then we can reassess. I doubt that happens. I really doubt that happens. But again, I'm just spitballing here because I'm trying to figure out if Rodgers wants to play and he doesn't want to play somewhere where it's a situation where they're building or rebuilding, where does he go? Like, where are the teams that he could have a playoff shot pretty instantly? Those situations, I'm like, I don't know why you would roll the dice on this guy at this point, unless they're seeing something on film that I'm not.
So, Charles, Cincinnati is 4-7, and you've got Joe Burrow has put up 27 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's playing incredibly well. You mentioned it. They're scoring a ton of points, and they're 4-7. Do you think Zach Taylor could be in danger here of losing his job?
Oh, man. First and foremost, I'd say under any other ownership, yeah, because there were Super Bowl aspirations. Burrow's been healthy. They're putting up numbers. But with that ownership, I tend to go no, because he's still got, it's not like it's not a Dallas situation where he's in the last year of his deal. Cincinnati, they don't like to fire owners because they're cheap. They went through years with Marvin Lewis where it was like, yeah, should they make a change? Probably, but they weren't going to do it because they're like, we'll owe them money and we're not going to do that. So I think that's part of what saves them. I think the defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, I think probably out the door, because at this stage, when I look at the Bengals, it's not like as you said, they're not scoring points. Like, they're putting up numbers. That's not the problem. The defense is the problem. You give up 34 to the Chargers, 35 to Baltimore, 37 to Philadelphia, right? 41 in the last loss to Baltimore early in October, 38 to Washington earlier in the season. They have not fixed anything defensively. So I could see them saying, okay, let's make a swap out at defensive coordinator and see if that's the thing that ultimately makes the difference. I just don't think if you fire Zach, it's not that you just owe Zach, you owe all the other coaches too, who still have money remaining on their contracts. And that's just not a move that ownership likes to make. I know the fan base is upset, but we all know Zach's an offensive coach, right? Does the offense look like that's the problem right now? No, it doesn't. It's clearly the defense that looks like it's the problem. If you can go out and get the right defensive coordinator, maybe things change pretty quickly. But there's no doubt Burrow's upset, and he has every right to be upset. I would, if I'm the Bengals, I'm like, okay, we'll swap out the defensive coordinator, but what are we doing with the wide receivers? Because we have to extend Jamar Chase. We have to extend T. Higgins if we're going to do that. And it doesn't feel like we're in a hurry to do that. These guys are upset. And, where do we go from here? He made a financial decision, by the way, on Mixon. I mean, that was ownership driven. The owner's the GM, Mike Brown. And look at what Mixon's done.
They're missing him.
Yeah, massively. I mean, look, no offense to Chase Brown, who I think is a good player, but he really needs to be part of a two-man backfield. And Mixon's when he's been on the field for Houston, he's such a difference maker for them. Prior to the hip drop tackle that he got injured on earlier this year, they were saying, okay, we're going to hardwire it. We're going to run it. We're going to get this guy like 25 touches a game. We think he's still got it in his legs. And he has shown absolutely, particularly since he's come back from the injury, he's got it. And they're a different offense when he's playing the way that he is. And that was a Bengals ownership decision. That wasn't Zach Brown. Wasn't like, hey, let's get this guy out of here. They just didn't want to pay him anymore. And they had the ability to move off him and get a seventh? Yeah. So ownership's part of the problem there too.
Yeah. Like I don't really think Zach Taylor should get fired, but it's got to be really heartwarming for Bengals fans to know that the possible firing of people, and Amy Adams Strunk is paying people already.
Right, how many are you going to pay? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about in this next coaching cycle, there is talk about, obviously trends are so important, and it's a copycat league, of course. And you've had the Zach Taylors and the Brian Callahans, and of course, spinning off the McVay and McShanahan, the McShay, whatever you want to call it. Success. Yeah, exactly. And now there's this talk about, of course, I think Vrabel's going to be a prominent name in this cycle. He's going to get a job,
sure,
as long as he doesn't want to be spiteful and just keep getting paid to do nothing by Amy Adams Strunk. But do you sense in talking to people around the league that the quote unquote culture coach, and of course Dan Campbell is the poster child for this, right? Is becoming more in vogue and maybe infringing on the whiz kid offensive coach?
What's interesting is I do think the dynamic that Detroit has sort of injected into the minds of owners. I was talking to a team president for an NFC team, and he's somebody I've talked to in the past. Like, he's been in the league decades, very highly respected. He's been up for huge posts with the league office and all these different things, and he's hired and fired a lot of coaches and stuff. And we talked in the past about the hiring in sets, and what we always talked about was the idea of okay, you hire the tandem that you hire, it's the GM and the head coach, and you want to create some guys that are rowing in the same direction. They're fighting for each other, but there's also a little bit of dynamic tension between those two. And it was interesting. I was talking to him the other day, and he said, I still think the set thing is a thing, and GM is still important. He said, but I do get the sense that you hear more when you go to owner meetings. The set now is who is your head coaching candidate, and then who's your top coordinator. And the dynamic that I think some owners are interested in is a motivator and a tactician. That's the set that now you're trying to hire, whether it's a defensive tactician or an offensive tactician. You want a motivator, and probably in the top spot, so a Dan Campbell type, and then you want a highly coveted or highly thought of tactician, either in your defensive coordinator spot or your offensive coordinator spot, who's probably a head coaching candidate, who you can pay enough and keep around for at least a couple of years. And then that tactician can also groom someone into his position after he leaves. To me, that's Detroit, right? Isn't that what that sounds like? It sounds like Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson. And So I would say that, in this rotation, if Mike Grable, let's say, is a head coaching candidate, if Bill Belichick's a head coaching candidate, the next question that's going to be is like, okay, you're building your staff. Tell me who your DC or OC is. That's really a difference maker. That's who is your, okay, it's Kevin O'Connell. Who is your Brian Flores? Now Flores is both a tactician and motivator. I think, O'Connell's a little bit of both, but that's not necessarily what they knew when they put those two together. I think they thought, okay, O'Connell's our tactician. Flores is really going to be the motivator. He's the loud guy in the room who gets things together. But he's just been exquisite drawing up defensive game plans as well. So that to me, I think, is kind of the dynamic beyond getting a good GM. But I think now when owners talk about coaching staffs and they want to hire a head coach, they don't just say, show me your book. They want to know, show me your book, show me who you're going to hire, show me who you fill your staff out with, but tell me why you have a defensive coordinator that's going to, be an agent of change in the NFL. Tell me why you have an offensive coordinator who's going to be ahead of, the curve right now. I'll give you an example. The Chargers, Minter right now, Jesse Minter, is what he's done with that defense has been really, really impressive. I mean, he's impressive in college. There's no question what he did at Michigan was something that raised some eyebrows, but Jim
Connor Stallions
Harbaugh,
helped, but sure.
What's that?
Connor Stallions might have helped a little bit, but whatever.
Oh, here we go again with that.
Oh,
I mean,
dude,
he doesn't have Connor
you want to watch
Stallions with
those
him
video?
now.
Do you want to watch those video clips of that Ohio State game where Connor Stallions is whispering in his ear before every play? I mean, no, he's a
okay,
good.
but there's no
he's
Connor
a good
Stallions
DC
now. I mean, okay,
I
let's
get
put
it.
Connor
I'm just
Stallions.
saying.
Just let
Do
it
we
go,
know that?
though. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, do we know that? That's a good point.
By the way, are you going to keep harping on that? Did I not tell
Yes,
you?
he is.
This is Joe. Literally, there is a esteemed, heavy-hitting Titan coach who, for years, the quote-unquote rumors are that he had all 22 tape that they were breaking down at halftime of college games. Okay, which you cannot do. Let's look at the all 22 of the first half. And
I'm here. Name names.
Yeah, I'm not going to get sued.
You better text me right after this.
But again,
I'm just
Chargers
saying.
are a good example. Like the Chargers are a good example that everybody thought, okay, we know what we're getting in Harbaugh. People weren't entirely sure what Jesse Minter was going to bring to the table on the NFL level, and he's been great. He's done a fantastic job with that Chargers defense. I think he's going to be somebody that will be thought of in the next rotation. So, yeah, if you're going to replace your head coach, don't just think about the head coach. Now, I think you need to know that they've got ties. There's a coordinator who's really a wizard that they're going to bring along, and I think when you look at kind of the dual roles now, it's not just GM coach anymore. It's important to make sure that you have a coordinator who's a difference maker out of the box. So at least one half of your football, you feel extremely confident in it. Stop talking about
Charles
Connor
Robinson. I know he loves some Connor Stallions. Big time Connor Stallions.
I'm a Jesse Minter fan too. He was good at Vanderbilt and Michigan stole away. I'm just saying, Connor Stallions seriously was telling him what play to call every play before at the Ohio State game, where CJ Stroud all of a sudden couldn't complete a pass. I'm just throwing it out there.
I mean, again, every team does it. It's true. I know you don't want to hear that complaint, but it is true. And I've heard all the stories about the syndicate, like all these guys getting together in the off season and trading, or every week and near the end of the week trading. Here's what this looks like. Here's what that looks like. I mean, when Michigan got killed by TCU. I'm telling you, man, everybody was like, man, TCU got all kinds of stuff, signal stuff from everybody.
Well, they got told to change all their stuff.
No, it wasn't
Michigan
just it wasn't just change your stuff. It was, here's what Michigan's running too. I don't doubt. You gotta let this. College football is cheating. Okay, it is. It always has been. Is you cheat in recruiting, you cheat in your coaching, you cheat in the off season when you're not supposed to be coaching the team. You cheat with your staff size, we haven't even gotten to the academics. Come on, man.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's
right.
the bottom line.
It's the
That's
pirate.
bottom line.
It is our era of pirates. Like that's what college football is.
It's the
If you
only
wanna
way
talk
that
about pirates in our lifetime. Those are the pirates of our lifetime. College football.
it's the only way a goober like Shane Beamer could take down Josh Heupel that one time. Charles, great stuff as always. We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next Thursday, my friend.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a good week.
Charles Robinson, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. Lots to react to with Charles. We'll do that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason at Twin Peaks in Madison this Sunday for the pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30. They'll break down the Titans' Week 12 matchup against the Texans, give you the latest updates before the game. Pregame show presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Also, make sure you check out MTSU football this Saturday on 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville. Blue Raiders taking on New Mexico State with a kickoff of 1:30 pregame at noon. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville, presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. Appreciate Charles Robinson for being with us in the last segment there. Again, Charles saying there, going back to the conversation we had earlier in the show, Joe, not a great year, not a great opinion of this quarterback class coming out. And he kind of brought it up unprompted there when we're talking about, Levis, but man, there have been plenty of drafts that have been quote unquote down at the quarterback position where one or two guys end up being pretty good. But if you're the Titans, that discussion we had earlier in the show about how you view the class, how you view potential answers in free agency and or via trade, and how that influences what you do with Levis next year, going to be really fascinating to see what the Titans arrive at in terms of their decisions there.
Yeah. And look, I always believe this, always will. You can have this loaded, amazing quarterback class, and you can get a complete lemon out of it.
Yep.
And you can have this whatever quarterback class and find your franchise quarterback in the third round. I mean, it's just possible. And again, Charles, maybe the most stunning thing he said to me was the whole Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers idea.
Yeah.
Excuse me, in San Fran. But as we all know, Brock Purdy, who was a good quarterback, I think he has had some rough luck this year with McCaffrey just now back and now with Ayuk out for the year and things like that. But again, you're talking Mr. Irrelevant. So your evaluation of each individual quarterback is what matters, not whether this class is this or that, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of, and I get it, like what Charles said, which is like, well, this isn't the class to do it. Well, maybe Jalen Milroe, you believe, is going to be a star. And you've done all the evaluation and that's it. And you have that conviction and it might work out for you. So the Titans certainly have to evaluate this class of quarterbacks as if they are taking one. They have to do that.
As people have pointed out on the text line, or they could take the Joe Rexrode approach and just offer the house to the Lions this offseason for old Hendon Hooker. Just get it done.
Yeah, for the record, I did not bring up Hendon. Someone else brought up Hendon. Yeah, and I mean, seriously, like at some point, I'd like to see him get an opportunity. I think he can be a good quarterback in the NFL.
He's playing every week. They're up 1,000 points. He's playing all the time.
He does get some reps, doesn't he, with what they're doing? But yeah, I think they might, just view that as he's there. They're trying to be the Packers. They're trying to be the Packers and have Rodgers and Love sit there forever. And then when it's time, and they're really glad that they never let the QB go.
Yeah, maybe so. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We got a lot of angry Predators fans on our text line. We'll get to some of their thoughts coming up next.
They're calling us idiots.
There's some of that, too, that's also happening
which may be
on
true.
The text line, which may or may not be accurate. Speaking of the Preds, join the Preds this Saturday for a special 6 p.m. puck drop as they welcome back to Smashville Hockey Hall of Famers David Poyle and Shea Weber. There will be a ceremonial puck drop ahead of the game. Coverage beginning at 5 o'clock on 102.5 The Game and on the Game Nashville app as well. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We got a lot of angry Predators fans on our text line. We're going to get hot and heavy a little bit more into them tomorrow on the show as well. Joe, one texter says, I listened to Barry Trotz on Stillbilly, which, first off, I love that that's what we're now referring to him as. But listen to Trotz on Stillbilly's show. Felt good after that. And then last night, the wheels fell back off. My question for you guys is the construction of the roster built for Hines or a different style? I feel Brunette is an Oregon-style football coach with a roster from Alabama under Saban. What do you make of that question, Joe?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I just feel like these players they added, if they're playing to their level that they've played at through their career, I think that's system proof, isn't it?
You would think. I mean, look, we make a lot of the Andrew Brunette system. It's not that different. Like, it's different from what they were doing in Tampa Bay, and Steven Stamkos has explained it to me a little bit just in terms of what some of the subtle differences are. But, like, by and large, like, offensively, what he's trying to do is get the puck off the ice as quickly as possible. Like, yeah, it's different from Hines. Like, Hines wanted Yossi and some of their defensemen to carry the mail, wanted to activate in the rush. And, it's not like you can't do that in this system. But by and large, they want you to get the puck up the ice as quickly as possible, try to get some transition opportunities that way, be effective on the rush, which, by the way, they've not really been this year. This should be a team that is more effective on the rush than they have been. I mean, how about this stat? Like, Alex Doherty threw this out there from the Tennessean this morning. Roman Yossi, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Brady Shea combined for 1 goal on the 5-game road trip. I mean, you're just not going to win. Like, if those guys are combining for 1 goal on the 5-game road trip, you're not winning. And, Stamkos scored 2 against Vancouver. But, like, it's too much of when one guy gets going, somebody else falls off. And quite frankly, just too much of nobody getting going at the same time at all. Like, that's just not happening this year. It's a disaster right now. There's no other way to put it. Like, right now, it is a disaster. And that doesn't mean that it can't get better. But 6 wins in your first 20 games with this roster is totally unacceptable.
Yeah. And so, again, it's like, so how are they that stagnant 5-on-5? We talked about earlier, obviously they're bad 5-on-5, but also like the expected goals is still way below the goals are still way below expected goals. So, earlier in the years we were talking about, okay, well, this guy or that guy, like the shooting is just that's going to change, right? Like that's just that's a small sample size and it happens. And, your shooting percentage is going to go up to be more like the norm, but it's like no one can figure it out. And again, how much is chemistry just a part of this thing that's an undefined thing, but obviously there's just disconnects. And I don't have a good answer, but I understand it's going to come back around to the coach. But I think it's way more complicated than that.
I think it's way more complicated than that too. And again, I said it earlier, like, I really like Andrew Brunette as a coach. I like Andrew Brunette's philosophies as a coach. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's really smart. Having said that, like, when it's going as poorly as it's going right now, like, I understand the fan base conversation. I mean, this is not what this was supposed to be. I mean, I built in a little time for growing pains early in the year. And I guess you're still relatively early in the year, but 20 games is pretty good sample size, man. Like,
quarter of the season.
We're a fourth of the way into the season now. So, and I said this earlier, it's one thing to have the records you have. It's another thing to not even look like you're really all that close to digging your way out of it. And that's where they look right now. Like, Joe, I walked away from the game last night thinking, man, they just look like they're bad, like just straight up bad. And I can't for the life of me figure out how that would be with this team.
Right. And so you'll get into a lot. We've had some, there's some good ideas floating around, and there's some obvious ideas that are just silly, like in terms of like these guys don't care, or they're playing with no effort, something like that, which is overstated. But there is a difference between playing hard, playing at the level you have to, the baseline you have to play, and playing desperate, right?
Yeah.
And I don't feel like there's a desperation with this team, and there probably has to be to compensate for other things that aren't happening. And so this is where people get into. I mean, I'm seeing I don't want these rich fat cats. I want kids who are hungry. Now, I understand that, but when you're paying the fat cats, they are the ones who must get it going.
Yeah,
I mean,
that decision's been made. Like they've done what they've done with their contracts. And again, like Barry Trotz can get on there and talk about a rebuild. I said at the time, you can't rebuild with this team. So, I mean, they've got some untradeable contracts. They've got some old contracts that they're going to have to find a way to play through it. They have to figure it out. There's no choice.
Yeah, the rebuild thing that's after a lot of pain.
Yeah.
That's after a lot of pain between now and then. And then at that point, there's multiple jobs being discussed.
No doubt about it. We'll have more on the Preds tomorrow. Look ahead to a busy weekend in football around here as well. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Chase and Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.